Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you watch with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, as always, it is a pleasure to have you along. And we have a sponsor for this episode. It's sponsored by Anonymously. Shalom Aleichem Rebbe. I don't know who this is. I hope all is well. My daughter Rachel Leah is becoming a bas mitzvah on the 5th of Kislev and asked me to sponsor an episode for her. You know, that's who I'm looking for, the elementary school audience. So this is a wonderful thing to get as a gift for a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, or even for a bris or a pidyon ben. I get a very young audience sometimes. She is an avid fan of the podcast and, of course, Rabbi Siddur and Torah Live. She also hopes the Rav will open a girls' cemetery. He also hopes the girls, I hope you don't have to wait that long, will open a girls' seminary by the time her older sister, who's now 13, is ready to graduate high school, so they and their younger sister can attend. I would appreciate if the Rav could give her a special personalized bracha. Thank you so much, Rebbe. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu continue to bless the Rav, the family, the audience, and all of Klal Yisrael with Hatzlacha and all good things. Absolutely. And congratulations on becoming part of Klal Yisrael. And now, if you do anything wrong, Beis Din can punish you. So I'm glad that you're part of the Jewish people and carry the same guilt with the rest of us. So Mazel Tov. And we have a very special episode this week, because I have somebody who is a legend in the international community. I'm not saying in the Jewish community, in the international community. And that is, of course, Rabbi Tovia Singer, who, if you have not seen one of his videos and you have not heard of him, then come out from under the rock. You must still be on Iwo Jima hiding, and one of the Japanese soldiers left over from World War II, and you don't know the world is over, and you should be coming out. And so, Rabbi Singer, a pleasure. I'm so honored that you came to be on our show.
Well, I'm delighted to be here, Rabbi.
So I've watched, I don't know how many of your videos. I watched them over and over again. They are incredibly addictive. How many videos have you made altogether, if you had to guesstimate?
I think a few thousand, I guess. I'm not sure, really.
All right. I didn't see all of them, but I did see a lot of them. And I don't know what this talk show is when people call up and yell at you, Christians and stuff.
Well, the producers know that if, when we have a whole series of callers waiting, if there's a hostile caller,
they go first.
Oh, absolutely. They go to the front of the line immediately.
You're usually very patient. Every now and then you get, I feel like a little annoyed with these people because they're unusually nasty. So, but debating missionaries, priests, ministers, just absolutely incredible. But the part I'm interested in is, where did you come from? How did this happen? Who is Tovia Singer, the man behind the legend? You were born in...
Well, technically, I was born in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, but I have no memory of that. I really grew up in Borough Park, Brooklyn.
It's just like McKeesport.
It's exactly the same. And many people think McKeesport and Borough Park are just, they just think it's a suburb of Borough Park, but it is not. And I want to correct that for the viewers. So as it turns out, Christianity was something as foreign to me as, right. And the only thing I knew, I was born 15 years after the Holocaust. Right. And I knew that it was Christians that did that to our people. Right. I knew that Jews did not perish in Buddhist or Hindu countries. Right. And I thought Christianity was very strange.
But what did you have? Where were you exposed to it in Borough Park?
In Borough, there was there was a Holy Ghost Catholic church on 17th Avenue, and it was very bizarre to me because I knew in some way as a kid that Christianity was sort of saw itself as a breakaway of Judaism in some way, right. That there was some shaykhs there, but that they would have a statue of Mary in Mamish, which right in the front garden. Like, how could you have a statue? It's beferish in 10 Commandments. You're not allowed to have statues. Right. And they wore yarmulkes, the priests wore yarmulkes. The whole thing looked mad to me.
I found that when I went to Borough Park by the holiday season, they overdo the decorations. If there's one goyish house, they put up every decoration they can. And I realized because they have to really assert themselves. Shvetzi, the goy, you know what I mean, in Borough Park, you have to really assert yourself. But you went to where to school? Where'd you go?
I learned in the mirror.
You were in the Mir?
Yeah, I was in the Mir.
In America?
In America, right. Exactly.
And then you came to the Mir here?
Yeah.
Wow.
By the way, there's in Muncie, I don't know if they're still there, there was a guy who, every Kratzmach had the whole New Testament on his front lawn. He had actually rock
the apostles.
Orange. They had the whole thing from Matthew to Revelation, the whole New Testament's on his front lawn. They had to bring an extra electrical wiring just to run the whole thing. It was a whole thing. I think they somehow bought him out.
Wow.
And but the thing, it was very foreign to me. The only thing that occurred was when I was about 16, I actually saw Jews for Jesus on the streets of New York, and I was shocked, as every other Jew is. I was like, "What, Jews?"
Did they approach you?
It was in the middle of the night. It was Saturday night. My family was walking in Midtown Manhattan. They were putting up posters on the lampposts along Fifth Avenue saying, it read, "Come to Jews for Jesus this," I don't know, whatever it was, Tuesday night, learn more about your Jewish Messiah. Look, I'm sure you've ran into these people.
I haven't. I have never met a missionary.
You look disappointed, Rabbi.
No one has ever come up to me. No one has accosted me. I've been listening to all your stuff. I'm all ready, and no one comes to me. You know?
So that's what I go through.
It's so disappointing.
They don't like.
You remember Key 73?
Sure, of course.
You had to be a kid back then.
I was a kid. It was my bar mitzvah year.
Yeah. So, but here in Israel is very good. There's a guy, Yossi Abrams. I don't know if you know him. So he was learning in Haifa by was it Kfar Hasidim? I think it is the yeshiva there. Anyway, so Key 73 came up, and some anti-missionary people told him, be on the lookout for these people. He says, so what do you do? Say, you believe all that New Testament garbage? So he says, yeah. He goes, it says, if I ask you for the shirt off the back, will you give it to me? He says, yeah. He says, give me your watch. And then you walk away. And so everybody in yeshiva had new watches except for me. So I can't find a missionary. There's not one to be found. This is Key 73. They're supposed to be working the streets. I finally see a guy with a sign that says, you don't need Moses. I checked to make sure he had a good watch. I got on the bus after him. I said, you believe that New Testament garbage? He goes, no. He says, well, what does the sign say? And he turns it around. Egged tours can take you to the promised land. He says, I never got a watch. Anyway, all this time, I've never bumped into a missionary. I've never seen anybody. So you were approached, or you were never approached?
No, I was approached. I engaged them. I really began to argue with them.
This is in high school.
Yes, I was 16 years old. So I was in high school.
How do you know what to say about Christianity?
I didn't know. There was nothing in my life that could have prepared me for that unfortunate conversation that went absolutely nowhere very, very quickly.
Right.
Nothing. I was in shock. And in fact, there was a fellow watching this whole balagan in Midtown Manhattan, and he pulled me away from them. And he said to me, what are you arguing with them? You don't know enough to argue with them, which I was flabbergasted. I learned yeshiva. We have mishmer twice. What are you talking about?
Right.
I don't know enough. These guys, I'm not sure if they're Jewish. It was very frustrating.
What yeshiva guy has ever learned Isaiah 53?
But the truth is, it's a tragedy. You know, I'll tell you, we've raised a generation that has not learning Nevi'im.
Right.
And this is a very, very serious problem. We're paying a very high price for that. And this is, it's very important that the yeshiva community restore the study of the Nevi'im. It's very important that, now, there are communities from the students of the Gra, as an example, that take it very, very seriously.
And the Maharal style, where they go through all of Tanakh.
Well, the Gra was very clear that you had to learn Tanakh before you could even start. So there are kids in Hebron and Yerushalayim that know Tanakh Baal Peh.
Right.
But it's
Zilberman in Yerushalayim also.
Zilberman, exactly, that community. So this is something that we really need to bring back.
Right.
It's a tragedy. And the truth is, when I learned Navi now, I teach Navi here in Yerushalayim, and it's on YouTube, so people can go through Sefer Yeshayahu. Isaiah is not an easy sefer.
Right. Doesn't read easy.
90% of it is poetry. And when I say poetry, it means it's not like reading the book of Joshua or Kings or Samuel. It's not easy to read. There are only 5 chapters that you can just pick up, read it, and understand it. 5 out of 66. So therefore, it's very important to understand that, to understand history. And as a result of this, people don't understand the Tekufa we're in. Mashiach, what are we expecting?
Right.
What are we looking for? What are the signs? All these things are all in the Nevi'im. So it's, you know.
And then when you hit Daniel, and it's in Aramaic, you know.
Right.
Just all bets are off.
But Daniel,
and then they can quote anything they want from Daniel, and you're like, well, I always say when I don't know where a pasuk is from, I either say it's Yeshayahu or Yechezkel because I figure nobody ever read them. So, it's the best guess I can come up with,
The first 6 chapters of Daniel, no one has an excuse not to read. It reads like Sefer Bereshit. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
The last 6 chapters of Daniel is difficult, very difficult.
Right.
It's not rocket science, but you do need to have help with it. It's not so simple. But the first 6 chapters, most people are familiar with the events that are recorded by this holy Navi. And why is Daniel in the Ksuv, not Nevi'im, is so interesting. Daniel was a very great man because he really made it to the top, and yet he would not relinquish his principles. He was very young. He was a real prodigy. We had a lot of the Nevi'im were prodigies. Yirmiyahu HaNavi was only 15 years old when HaKadosh Baruch Hu called him to be a Navi. And in fact, that was his chief argument to God of why God, why don't you pick somebody else?
Right.
I'm just a kid. Right. And God said, I created you from the womb to do this. You're set to do this. Zechariah was very, very young. These were prodigies. They were giants. Yeah. And these are the people that carved the way for us to continue to do the work that we do. And they all spoke about the time we're in.
Right. So it's really, okay. So now you go to Mir High School and then you go to Mir in Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
And then how in the world did you get from there?
What happens is,
why didn't you become an accountant like every other good Jewish boy in Borough Park?
No, when you see missionaries destroying our community,
and you saw that in Eretz Yisrael, like you were learning in the Mir.
I learned in the Mir entirely in New York, not in Eretz Yisrael.
Oh, you didn't
I didn't come here to Eretz Yisrael to learn, but the key was the following: these Christians were advancing arguments.
So where did you see them? I mean,
they were all over the place. And in the 1970s, are you kidding? As you talked about Key 73, so what most people don't know what that means, and that is in 1973, there was an explosion of missionary activity as a result of a conference in Switzerland. The bottom line was there was Jews for Jesus was incorporated in 1973 to convert Jews to Christianity so Jesus
There was
can make
something
a second
special
coming.
about 1973?
Yeah, because it's a half a decade after Yerushalayim was liberated, and it was a little more than a quarter of a century before the year 2000, which the Christians thought Jesus was going to make a second coming. And one of the... Nishkalung, it didn't happen.
Then you know he's really Jewish because he's late.
But the key is that so the viewers understand this point. In 72, evangelicals gather and they want to understand. They felt there was pressing. Yerushalayim is in the hands of the Jews, which is in Tanakh. Before Mashiach comes, the Jews must have Yerushalayim, and then there's a war, and they wanted to understand how could they convert the Jews. Why is it so hard to convert the Jews? Of all people in the world, the Jews, and they know
Was this the 73 war?
No. It was 67. Yerushalayim was liberated.
No, I'm saying, did they pick 73 because of the Yom Kippur War?
It really wasn't in 73.
Started before that.
So I'll explain. This conference takes place in Lausanne, which is in western Switzerland, in 1972. So in 72, evangelicals gather in western Switzerland for a very important conference. It's called the Lausanne Conference on Jewish Evangelism, where they want to understand why had the church failed in the past in their effort to convert the Jews and what new techniques could be employed to finally bring the Jewish people to the church, and to discover there are 2 major problems with converting Jews that don't apply to everyone else. First, Jewish people, for some reason, equate Christianity with persecution.
Go figure.
I know, it's a shocker. How did that happen? I don't know. So that was number one. So number one is they had to somehow distance themselves from the church that had been our chief persecutors for 2,000 years.
How do you do that?
Are you a Jew? We love you. Baruch Hashem. We love the Jews because you're chosen. Persecution, oh no, those people weren't real Christian. A real Christian loves the Jew, and we love Israel too. We're very pro-Israel. So that was one part. So one part is to say that the real Christian loves the Jews, and all the Christian anti-Semites, which is all the church fathers and reformers, they weren't real Christians. Nobody was a real Christian except for 4 people. They're the real Christians. So, okay, so that's the first approach. Later layer two they discovered is that Jewish people are very proud of their Jewish identity. And this is the very dangerous part. Jewish people, even those who are assimilated, who are not observant, will say to you, look, I was born a Jew, I'll die a Jew. I don't want to become a Christian. I don't want to stop being Jewish. And this is really where it jammed in. So the new approach was something completely unique. And that is, when you becoming a believer in Jesus, you're not converting to another religion. Oh, no. You're becoming a Messianic Jew, a completed Jew, a fulfilled Jew. It is, after all, the most Jewish thing you could do. Jesus was a Jew. Disciples are Jewish. How could it not be Jewish to believe in Jesus? In fact, we're not going to call him Jesus anymore. We're going to call him Yeshua. We're not going to call it a New Testament. We're going to call it a New Covenant. We're not going to tell someone to come to a church. We'll say go to a Messianic congregation, which is a church that's designed to look like a synagogue.
So my first question would be, then why don't you become a Jew if Jesus was a Jew?
Right. So the church always holds that Christianity is the true fulfillment of Judaism. Their taina is,
eat kosher, keep Shabbos.
So that's a little caveat. So now, you see, Rabbi, you're too sophisticated for all these things. But in truth, there are some, not a lot, some Messianics actually do in some odd way like the Messianic congregations have the services on Shabbos. They don't have them on Sunday.
Really?
They may have another one on Sunday for the Goyim. For the Puerto Ricans, they have another one on Sunday. So, and all the Puerto Rican people, I didn't mean anything by that. But the key is that, like, for instance, you have in Yerushalayim, all over the place, Messianic congregations. None of them in this town, but not far from, we can walk to Messianic congregations. So they have Kabbalah Shabbos Friday night. They have Sabbath services Shabbos morning.
How many Jews in Israel are part of this?
The numbers are hard to come by. Is it possible that there are 50,000? Probably.
50,000 in Israel?
Yeah, probably. But it's hard to know because many of the
That's bigger than the Mir.
Most of the Jews who are Rahman al-Hassan in the church are really in churches. They're not Messianic congregations. It's very hard to know. Moreover, there are many Christians here in Israel that are not Jewish at all, but they rather come from Ukraine, from Russia, and so on. And they're Christians. The only thing is they got into Israel because they have family that's Jewish and so on. And therefore, there are laws in Israel about making aliyah if you have a Jewish grandparent or whatever it is. Yeah. So we don't know. The guess is that there are probably 50,000 halachic Jews in Eretz Yisrael that are involved in the Christian religion.
And in America?
Probably about 300,000 is the guess, roughly the size of the Jewish community of Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah. But it's hard to the numbers are hard. Look, we're living in a time where almost every Jew knows of somebody that's involved in the Messianic movement. That's how bad it is. I mean, I don't even need to ask you, but you probably know somebody who lost a family member to one of these groups or a very close friend to one of these groups.
I don't know any.
Yeah.
I don't know any Christian missionaries. I don't know any Jews for Jesus. Nothing. They all stay away from me. I don't know what it is. There's something about me that's just off-putting.
Well, it's not like you live
I have enough problems with Jews.
And it's not like you live in Dallas. It's not like you live in the Christian Bible Belt.
I travel around and stuff, and I have a big family. Can I know her extended family? And,
Look, you're very fortunate, Baruch Hashem. Yeah. It is, however, a plague that is befalling the Jewish communities worldwide. And this movement, so that's what was developed in 72 that makes it thoroughly different than Jewish evangelism that was pervasive prior to the 1970s. I mean, 1967 really was the year, the Six-Day War, was a big trigger. It was a trigger in the Jewish world, lahavdil, as well.
Yeah, it's what the Baal Tshuva movement
started. The whole Tshuva movement really began because mamish messianic prophecies unfolded.
Yeah.
I was a child. I don't know if we're about the same age.
I was in fourth grade.
So we're about the same. So whatever it was, I mean, they were dancing on the streets of New York, and it was like it was a change.
It became cool to be Jewish.
Well, it was something unbelievable. So it everywhere it had a ripple effect in the Jewish world, meaning the non-religious Jewish world, people mamish were doing tshuva, and you had in the Christian world, it triggered an awakening that now we're here and God is working through Israel, Christian Zionism, which was much earlier. It actually begins in the 19th century in America, and continues to unfold, but then it just explodes. So
because Martin Luther tried this also. He says, we took away all the statues, we took away all this. Now you can come and join Christianity because it's not a problem.
Right.
And we were like, no thanks. He says, then I'll kill you all.
Luther was a terrible anti-Semite.
Right, but he started out as, I've cleaned up Christianity. Now it's close enough to Judaism. You can come and join, Right.
He writes an essay on the Jews in 1523 in which he talks about the fact that he even says, if I had been a Jew and see such idiots and blockheads teaching the Christian religion, I would have rather been, a Jew than a Christian. I would have rather been a pig than a Christian. Right. So he blames the Jewish rejection of Christianity on the Roman Catholic Church, which was his chief nemesis. After all, he was the reformer who was fiercely anti-Catholic. He thought the Pope was the Antichrist. Now, and you're correct. What happens, of course, the Jews go, well, that's not the issue. The issue is that there's no relationship.
We still have a problem with that whole Jesus thing.
So his although his anti-Semitism is in earlier works. Right. That means his commentaries prior, he was not a nice guy. He was really a bad guy. His personality, he was a real grubber mensch. He was a nasty fellow. But
those wacky Germans,
whatever it was, he was not the kind of guy you'd want to have lunch with. Right. He just wasn't. He was nasty in many, many ways that are not appropriate for the show. But he was a fierce anti-Semite, and it continues to grow his hatred for the Jews. And in 1543, he's already writing books on the Jews in their lives, where he's calling upon synagogues to be burnt down and prayer books to be burnt down and Jews to be expelled. And he spends the rest of his life attacking the Jewish people with a fierce anti-Semitism that really would surprise you.
Are Protestants more anti-Jewish than Catholics?
No. So what happens is
Catholics have a pretty poor track record.
So the Catholics, each one is separate. So the Catholic Church was always very anti-Semitic, but there was the result of Pope Pius XII's collaboration with the Nazis, and that the Catholic Church had a relationship with the Third Reich, that after Pius XII died, a new pope was brought in, and his name was John the 23rd, who actually was a philo-Semite. He was, no question, in all of Roman Catholic history, he was the most pro-Jewish pope who actually saved Jews during the Holocaust, and they dafka brought him in as to counter, because it was known that the Catholic Church was not just silent, it was a nightmare, as you know.
They were the ones who helped the Nazis get to Brazil, I heard.
Well, yeah, they had the Odessa file, how to help Nazis get to Brazil, blah, blah. But John the 23rd pushes forth the Second Vatican Council. The key for us, what's germane to the viewer, is that a small document called Nostra Aetate, which means in our time, says that the Jews are really, doesn't say they're chosen, but anti-Semitism is wrong, it's a sin, and that all the anti-Semitic liturgy, like Perfect is Jew from the Good Friday prayers, had to be removed from the Catholic. They didn't become Zionists or anything like that. It was a movement in the correct direction. I mean, it distanced itself from anti-Semitism. And in fact, the very, very anti-Semitic Roman Catholics, like the Mel Gibson type, weren't Makabbalah. They rejected John the 23rd.
Met with Mel Gibson.
No.
He did that Jesus movie showed the Jews
Mel Gibson
torturing him.
can't stand the current pope. He believes that
the pope at the time, whoever was
Mel
before him,
is too young for that. No, they reject. These are people. Mel Gibson. There's a lot of guys like this. There are Roman Catholics who believe, in English, is that the seat is empty. That there has not been a legitimate pope since Pius XII. He was the last legitimate pope.
The one during the Holocaust.
The Hitler's pope. He was the last legitimate pope, and every pope subsequently is really it's blasphemy, and we're not makabel them at all. And these are called, it's a nice word, they're called traditionalists, which sounds like a nice word, but really these are very, very dangerous Catholics.
Wow.
These are the people, I mean, you have a lot of people out there, I don't want to go through all the names, but those guys say, no, the Catholic Church messed up by that. But that's completely separate than the Protestant movement. What happened in the Protestant movement is that although the reformers were all anti-Semites, Luther, the second generation Calvin, but what happens is something exploded in the 19th century with a man named John Nelson Darby, who came to the United States. He was an Englishman, and he, born in 1801, came to America, and he preached the idea that the Jews are really chosen, and that Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Jewish people.
Wow, this must have shaken everybody up.
Well, in England, it would shake people up because that's the Church of England, which is not pro-Jewish. But America was already philo-Semitic, meaning America was born out of a rejection of the Church of England, out of a rejection of King George III. And George Washington, as an example, had a very favorable view of Jews. And Hamilton, there's a machlokes if he actually was Jewish or not Jewish.
Really?
But they favored...
Not in the play.
It doesn't come out in the play, but his mother did convert to Judaism. There's a Shaila, but he went to yeshiva. That means he grew up in
Hamilton?
Yeah. Hamilton grew up in a little island called Nevis, where more than half of the Freeman Jewish community, population was Jewish. He went to Hebrew school. He spoke Hebrew. He could recite the Ten Commandments in Lashon Kodesh, and he did that. Hamilton was very pro-Jewish, very pro-Jewish. I mean, he was... And it's a question. There's some scholars that say he was Jewish, that his mother converted to Judaism before he was born. Other scholars not. No, this is very serious stuff. So therefore, as you can imagine, the United States was very receptive to the notion that the Jewish people are in fact chosen. And because the Church of England says that we have been replaced, we're going just the opposite. The Jews are chosen. Israel belongs to the Jews. There was even a consideration that perhaps the Hebrew language should be an official language in the United States. That idea didn't make it, but you could see it in, for instance, Yale's logo, right, which is in Hebrew. So therefore, America was very receptive to this. There were other people, Moody, which a Bible college is named after him, Cyrus Schofield, a lawmaker from Kansas, who creates a Schofield Bible in the early 20th century. So the idea of Christian Zionism explodes in the United States, which is the only place it could have, because the United States was very receptive to something that was pro-Jewish. And so therefore, they were riding a wave of this. So that's what's happening in American Protestantism. Christian Zionism begins in the United States and then proliferates around the world. Well, you have Christian Zionists in Norway, all over the world.
But German Protestants were still anti-Semitic.
To this day, French. So there are, but there are thousands of German Christian Zionists. Oh, yeah? Tens of thousands of them. And Swedish, who are in all these countries, and they march here. Every Sukkot, they march here. And these people are real Christian Zionists. The fancy term is they're premillennial dispensationalists. It doesn't matter what those words mean. But the point is, here's the key. James Balfour, the Foreign Secretary of England, he was a Christian Zionist. He held that Eretz Yisrael, all of Israel, no West Bank, Schmess Bank, none of that stuff. All of Israel, from river to sea, belongs to the Jews, and God gave it to us. So all this
revisionism about the Balfour Declaration, that he didn't really mean it, then he was tricked into it, etc., is not true.
No, it wasn't tricked into it at all. No, it was for them the idea that to restore the Jews. Jesus can't make a second coming unless the Jews are back in the land of Israel and control of Jerusalem. Absolutely, these guys were the founder of Red Cross was a Christian Zionist. This spread all over the world. So it wasn't just contained in that area, but it actually bled into many different Christian denominations. And today, this is all over the world. There are millions of Christian Zionists. But here's the caveat. The caveat is that virtually all the missionaries that want to convert us all are Christian Zionists. All of them are.
Really?
Yeah. 95% of them are. And I'm being charitable by saying there's 5% who don't. It's probably a smaller number that don't. That means
those are the Jews for Jesus missionaries.
Yeah, that's right. That
you don't get non-Jews for Jesus missionaries anymore, do you? Just people who are trying to make you straight out Christian without trying to throw in the Jewish
they would
trick.
Look, if they would love to. The Orthodox Church, which is very anti-Jewish, would love to convert any one of us, of course. But they're not going to come over to you. If someone walked in there, for them it would be, it'd be Simchas Torah for them to convert a Jew. They would love it, but they're not really into that. I
watch very often when Ben Shapiro speaks at a university, almost anybody gets up and says, "Why don't you accept Jesus?
Right.
Why don't you?"
Right.
And he has to finesse his way around it.
He doesn't
want to alienate people, but he's like, "No, I'm okay."
No, he actually does it very well. I mean, he handles it. First of all, his response. What? I mean, very briefly. It's nothing. We never had an intense thing. He has a very different audience than I do. But he actually is. He's very well read, and his responses are. He's not. He's not watering it down, but he actually hits it in exactly the way to say, look, for you, the church is important. I want you to believe in God. That's the important thing. But we don't accept Jesus because he didn't fulfill messianic prophecy. So
do you tell that to Christians also?
What's that?
Do you tell Christians you should be a good Christian?
No, I don't. I think it's a mother load of bad ideas. I grew up thinking that way, and I don't believe that at all. And it's very important for people to believe in the one God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All messianic prophecies of the Goyim will grab the shirt of a Jew, say, "Take us with you," because now we know that God is with you. And the doctrine of the Trinity is the mother load of bad ideas. It's avodah zarah, and it's terrible for the neshama of a goy. And therefore, a goy should only believe in one God. And in fact, we see in Tanakh that at the end of days, the goyim will say to the Jews, "We made a terrible mistake." And I think because of 2,000 years of exile, we've come to say, "Oh, Christianity is good for goyim," and it doesn't make sense, because if it's not true, then why should they can do better than that?
Well, they always bring the Rambam that Christianity and Islam are like franchises to try to bring them over to Jewish ideas.
People don't read the Rambam. People read Rabbi Google. They don't read. They don't read Rabbi Moshe, but they don't read the Rambam. So if you go to Hilchos Malachim at the very end, so the Rambam simply explains a conundrum. Why is it that the religions that post-date the destruction of the Second Temple are predicated on Judaism, and conversely, the religions prior to the destruction of the Second Temple had nothing to do with Judaism? What was happening? So the Rambam explains that Christianity and Islam rose up. Why? Because those two religions believe that the Jews were chosen, that mitzvahs are given to the Jews. There is one God. Only thing is, because of their prophets or demigod, they believe they're absolved of it. See, because the Navi tells us something very interesting, that when Mashiach comes, the Goyim immediately recognize their error. This is a very critical point. The critical point is that really Mashiach is about Goyim, not about Jews. Right. It's really the Goyim are delivered. Pesach, the Jews were delivered, but Mashiach, the world is delivered. That's what we say at the end of Aleinu, that the whole world will accept HaKadosh Baruch Hu as king. The question is, how can that happen? So the Rambam is unbelievable. He says, therefore, the false religions now have to be those that say that Judaism was once true. Now, what happens is that Judaism is, of course, the default baseline. So therefore, what he is explaining is that when the true Mashiach comes and they see that it's not who they think it is, they immediately recognize their error, which is in Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 is the Goyim realizing they made a terrible mistake, and they turn to the Jews and say, now we know that you suffered because of our sins. It's mamish ma'ardik. But the key is that's what the Rambam is simply explaining, that that's why these Abrahamic religions came after Chum Sheni. One caveat, if you viewers who don't understand this, Mashiach basically has to come after the temple is destroyed. After all, one of the things Mashiach is doing,
that's one of the big problems with
building
Jesus.
The Beis Hamikdash.
He was born in the wrong
He was a little bit too early. So the key
another raya, he's not a Jew.
You have Yechezkel, the last 9 chapters of the book of Ezekiel describes the building of the third temple, the Messianic temple. So Mashiach is rebuilding a temple that had been destroyed. So therefore, all this has to be explained. So the Goyim, the key is that when the true Mashiach comes, the Goyim all recognize the mistake, and that is triggered by the destruction of the second temple. That's why our tradition is that the Mashiach was born on Tisha B'Av. It doesn't mean literally he was born on Tisha B'Av, but it means from the moment of despair, from the moment of the second temple was destroyed, the kinetic energy, the potential of Mashiach was launched at that moment. Now, at that moment, and every door that does not bring the Mashiach, it's like the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in that door. Like there's a churban in that door.
That's the laughter of Rabbi Akiva at the end of the
that's all that, right. So therefore, Tisha B'Av is not Memorial Day. Tisha B'Av is we're crying how that we have failed and what can we do. It's not we look like Americans celebrate Memorial Day and so on. We're not. This is not a Memorial Day. It's that we're failing because the Beis HaMikdash wasn't built in our door. Now we're living in a time where it seems like we're going to witness all of that unfolding now. However, his holy words, the one thing the Goyim couldn't have, so they have an idea of monotheism, basic monotheistic or mitzvahs and so on. But the one thing the Goyim can't have is they can't have Shabbos. Why? Shabbos is Beini Uvein B'nai Israel, Exodus 31. Right? Shabbos is only for the Jews. So
but they say we're the new Israel.
So what does Hashem do? He moves Christianity to Sunday and Islam to Friday. How foolish is that? That means Hashem moves these two religions, which know that Shabbos is the seventh day, which God made holy. Right. Even before Klal Yisrael was created, in Genesis chapter 2, we have Shabbos. We introduce Shabbos. There are no mitzvahs there because there's no Jewish nation yet. The mitzvahs the mitzvahs of Shabbos, applied Shabbos, don't come up in Kiddush, what we say, the first paragraph. There's no mitzvah, just God made it holy. But we don't have a Jewish nation yet, so there's no one to keep mitzvahs. It doesn't say that you have to keep Shabbos. That once you have a Jewish nation. Right. So therefore, Christianity is moved to Sunday, Islam to Friday. How foolish is the Jew that Shabbos was set aside for you? The whole world is. And what are we doing? We're reading the Jerusalem Post. You're preparing for a test. Idiot! You were given Shabbos. The whole world with Shabbos is you for the Jew. And what are you doing? You're doing something else.
We chased everybody else away.
We're wasting. Silly thing. So that's
if you speak to a Christian.
The Rambam does not say Christianity is a good thing. Rather, it happens to be the fiercest criticism of Christianity and of Jesus himself. He says, could there be anything more vile than Jesus? He quotes the pasuk in Daniel that Jesus is the worst thing in the world. People want to be ecumenical and they don't read the original text. The Rambam is simply explaining that Christianity plays that role to prepare the world for Mashiach, because when the true Mashiach comes, Christianity is the perfect false religion, so that the Goyim will then say, aha, now we get our mistake. Now we get our mistake. And really, the Jews were always right. Nelchi mochem ki shamanu Elohim imochem, Zechariah 8:23.
So you don't agree with Rabbi Riskin that Jesus is my favorite rabbi?
I don't look. I know. People feel a need, I guess, to
I always wondered
to be
about
ecumenical and to get along with
favorite
Christian.
Rabbi. I understand.
What am I going to say? Rabbi Riskin, I know he's a sweet man. He deals with a lot of Christians.
I would have said Rabbi Soloveitchik if I was Rabbi Riskin.
Yeah.
Over Jesus.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, look, it's, some people want to portray him as a sort of a hippie rabbi from the Northern Galilee. You can welcome to fantasize about that.
Did he exist?
Oh, probably did exist, because there's...
Josephus doesn't mention him.
Josephus, the genuine Josephus doesn't mention him. There is a passage in Antiquities 1833, which was an interpolation later, right? So did he exist? So the reason why it's likely that he did exist is because there are lies in the New Testament. There are concoctions in the New Testament that would not be necessary if he never existed. Like the idea that he was born in Bethlehem. So Matthew and Luke both have to come with two very different stories of how to get Jesus, who was really from the city of Nazareth, which is in northern Galilee. How did he get him to be born in Bethlehem? So each of them independently come up with a different plot device of how to arrange that. And they're completely contradictory. So if there was no historical Jesus, many of these lies would not be necessary. If it's Casper the Friendly Ghost, just say he's from Bethlehem. What do you need Nazareth for? Why is it always Jesus of Nazareth? You never hear Jesus of Bethlehem. So it is very likely. Now, this is history. So therefore, you can't redo history. This is the humanities. You can't say, like, you can do a blood test, say, I know that you have A positive blood type. But the evidence tilts in favor as there was some historical figure. Our tradition also would indicate there's some historical figure.
Well, he says Yeshu, according to the Gemara, was in the time of Yeshua ben Prachia.
Which should have been a century earlier.
100 years earlier.
The question is, so this is a big, big question among scholars. So we have two Yeshus in the Gemara. One is 1st century BCE, as you mentioned. We have another in the 2nd century. And the question, and this was the chief defense that Rabbi Chila Paris used in 1242 when the Talmud was put on trial in France. They're saying it's not the same guy. The argument that the church used against the Talmud is your Talmud contains blasphemy against Christianity. Jesus. What was the chief argument of the Bali Tosfos at the time, including the chief rabbi of Paris, was it's not the same guy, it's a different guy. V'horaya, and the proof is that you see it's from Shubin Prach, he's from this. Now, there's a very, very big question, and there really is a serious question, is that really the case? Meaning, is it possible? You have to remember, when the Gemara was compiled and edited in the form essentially that we have was basically 6th century, right? At that time, there were no Christians to speak of in Bavel. That means that the people who edited and finally assembled the Talmud as we have it, it would undergo some other, but basically as we have it, Shas as we have it. At that time, Christianity, they wouldn't have been afraid to write anything that was unflattering about Jesus because there was no Christians to bother them. But Christianity would move east fast. I'm talking with its power. And it's possible that the texts were we edited them in some way so that it wouldn't be the same person. This is a big question. Are these Gemaras really about the Jesus of Christianity, and we had to self-edit it because we didn't want to get in trouble? This is a very, very, very big question among us in the frum world, and in the scholarly world. The consensus is absolutely it's the Jesus of Christianity, and we changed it. And moreover, you could see that in the Gemara Megillah about the Septuagint, the Targum Shivim on Daf Tes in Megillah, that in fact, why does the Gemara go out of its way to say? So it's a very strange thing that the Gemara, that the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, was translated, but it was altered for a number of reasons, but one of the chief reasons is not to get us in trouble with the Malchus, right? So why is this Gemara in there? And there's a miracle that was done to create this thing. So and there's a fast day in the Shulchan Aruch, so it seems schizophrenic. Is it a good thing? Is it a good zach or a schlechte zach? A miracle was done to create the Septuagint, and we're supposed to fast. It's a minor fast day almost nobody I know of keeps, but we combine it with a Sarbatevis. We combine it, but it's not a Sarbatevis, and it's at the very end of Hilchos Tainis in the Shulchan Aruch. I think, in my view, this is a dog whistle to explain that you can't touch Tanakh, that you can't touch. But if you see that, in fact, Jewish communities are going to be destroyed and Jews are going to die, that you can alter other texts in order to save Jewish communities. The question is, did it work? I mean, many Jews died because of what it says in the Gemara. The question is, so I don't know the answer. But here's the key. How would you know? If you go back to old manuscripts, and the older you go back in the manuscript record, the more you're going to find not just a sinner of Israel, but rather Yeshu and Yoshua Hanotzri. So the early texts, So the early, and once you say Yeshu of Hanotzri, Jesus of Nazareth, so then there's no question who we're talking about here. Right. The Gemara also in Gittin about this sinner boiling in human excrement. So that's very, very, that would be a response to the Eucharist of Christianity. So people wonder, that's weird. Right. No, it's not really weird. What that is so the Eucharist is that if you eat the wafer, so it becomes the body of Christ. So it really is a very powerful thing. So you think the beginning of the digestive process, once it enters your mouth, that's why you can't put a piece of chaz in your mouth and then take it out, because your body, that's halacha. You can't take chaz and put it in your mouth and take out the bacon. So because you already started. So what's saying is that the last part of the digestive process, that's who you really are. So it seems to be pointing direction that the historical person was not the best person in the world. Yeah, well, Mr. Shapiro said pshat in that Gemara once. He said, what is tsaya? It's something that was part of your body and you expelled it. And Yashka came from our base medrash and spit him out. And he says that's what the Arizal means when he says, when Yaakov sent Esav a matana, it was Yashka.
So he says that's what he sent him. So he was part of Klal Yisrael, and it's like weird that they would take a Jew and make him into their God, you know?
It's interesting that, when Christians say, you Jews think you're chosen, I said, no, just the opposite. You think God is a Jew, we don't.
Yeah, you think we're chosen.
One guy said, you guys think you're chosen. I asked him, where in the Bible says, where does it say you're chosen? He said, the Bible said. I asked him, who are you complaining to? But it's the Christians that hold that God is Jewish. We don't hold God as Jewish.
Right.
It's just punkt verkehrt.
Right.
It's like, it's just the opposite, like genocide. What? It's like the world is...
All right. So the missionaries are now all over the place. Yeah. How do you get into this?
How did I get into it?
Yeah.
Well, I saw a problem.
You were just a regular normal guy.
How did you get into what you do? You saw a problem.
Because I'm not talented enough to do anything else. No. This is all I can do.
All right. The rabbi is being a little self-deprecating here for you, the viewers. Okay.
No, my dad always told me, you're a low yitzlach, and if I don't take care of you, you're going to starve to death.
For me, it was like a bomb went off. I will confess this to you. I didn't
But nobody in yeshiva says, you know what I think I should do? Fight missionaries.
No. It's no.
I can't think of anybody.
There was nothing. It just was very simple to me that I had to do... Look, I'm going to be very straight.
Your parents didn't say, why don't you go and get a job?
Kidding? The only thing is my uncle who lived in the old city of Yerushalayim, Meir Singer, Olav Hashem, who lived on 34 Miskav Ladach, he did give me a Christian Bible when I was 16 years old that he got as a matan, as a present. But the key was I felt, not immediately I felt I cannot be saved. I cannot accept that there are Jews trying to convert other Jews to Christianity. To me, this was just not acceptable.
Right.
As time went on, it was very easy to help. It was very easy to get them out of the church. And I did feel, and I do feel, and I didn't hear a voice or see a vision, but I feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put me on this earth to bring Jews out of the church. I believe that's why I'm here. That's my entire tafkid. And that's what I devoted my life to. And I operate out of that clarity.
How do you get started?
Well, you respond.
You read the New Testament.
Yeah, but you have to read all the literature and you got to get things. See, I thought...
So where'd you find this? Where did you go looking?
No, I told my uncle.
I've always wondered this. I said, where did Tovia Singer come from? How do you go from learning in the mirror to suddenly becoming an expert on Christianity and arguing with missionaries? Because I couldn't do that.
Why not?
Because I can't remember Luke 12 and then John 13 and, and 23 skidoo. I mean, these things are too hard for me, Oh, Isaiah 53. Yeah, okay. What about Ezekiel 24?
So you're right, because what you do...
I keep everything very simple. I'm a simple guy.
If someone gives you... I'm going to ask you a question, Rabbi.
Go ahead.
Someone gives you a phone number. Do you forget it immediately if you don't write it down?
No, I give it to my wife.
Right. But the point is... The point is you don't remember it.
No.
Don't. Good. Beautiful. Stay with me on this, okay? Let's say you have, I'm not going to ask you. Let's say I ask you, what is your 5 favorite songs? Whatever. It doesn't matter what they are, but I'm sure you have some music that you really mamish love, that when you hear it, it takes you into another planet.
Yes.
Now, that if someone plays that music, but they don't play it, they do one note off, the drum beat is a little faster, right. They leave out a little of the bass, a little of the treble, it's not enough vibrato, you go, wait, you're messing with that song. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Did you mamish sit and memorize every note, every arrangement? No. But the point is that you get it's so ecstatic to you to hear the music properly that's burnt into your neshama, so much so that you really did memorize, you hardline memorized every piece of music because it gives you so much joy, so much happiness.
So there was just something in you that drew you to this?
Tanakh is so gorgeous, so delicious, Mamish is so beautiful that it blew my mind away. And here's the weird one. Christianity is so evil. The New Testament is so dark. It's much worse than I thought. I always thought Christianity was a bad idea, a very bad idea. But I didn't know it was like this. I didn't realize the protocols of the elders of Zion. I didn't realize it's Mein Kampf. I didn't realize how bad it is. And that it's not that they're Toyim, Paul made a mistake and misapprehended. They mamish lied. He did stuff with Tanakh that would get a lawyer thrown in prison for fraud. So it was so bad that it burnt into my neshama. I'm not memorizing verses. I also don't remember the phone number, but I know the music. Did you ever watch, I'm sure you've done it, watching YouTube, and there's a documentary on the Third Reich on Hitler. You must have seen it. And you're sitting there watching this thing on Hitler's life, and you're going, I'm looking at the most evil person that ever lived, and you're just shocked. And it really sticks with you. So Christianity is that way. That means there's nothing benign in it. This is not Buddhism and studying the Pali Canon or the Bhagavad Gita of Hinduism, which is kind of boring. This is dark stuff because they're changing Tanakh in order to make it appear Christological. It's very, very dark, and therefore it's easy to remember.
I find it very repetitious. And
the New Testament?
Repetitious. And then you move to the next book, and then they say the same thing again, only they make up new stuff. And
That's a good point.
It's like, I don't know.
But you're not motivated to understand why Matthew and Luke changed things that Mark had written. Mark is
because I can't take any of them seriously.
Right. So, and it is. That means the three.
I don't read a lot from fishermen.
The three first Gospels are very similar. They're called the Synoptic Gospels. They're similar, but the way they change each other and play with each other is very intriguing. It's intriguingly dark. It's intriguingly evil. John is a very different guy, but it's all very dark.
When a Christian reads this makes sense to them?
Yeah, no, it's just the opposite. I assure you of this. The Gospels are very well written. Unlike the Quran, as an example, which is incoherent, is very hard to read or understand. I mean, I've read it through quite a number of times, and I don't think I understood more than 30% of what I was reading. It's very hard to read. The Christian Bible, particularly the Gospels, are all stories. They're very well written. There's a clear protagonist. There's a clear villain and antagonist, which are the Jews, and the stories read tragically, they read well. I wish it wasn't written as well as they were written, but they're written where the stories are gripping, and the Jews come out terribly. It's the protocol of the Elders of Zion is exactly the same thing. Mein Kampf, I read a number of times for the books that I've written, and it's very well written. Unfortunately, the Christian Bible, specifically the Gospels, people usually don't read Paul's letters very much because that's all doctrine and theology. But the Gospels, from beginning to end, from Matthew 1 to John 21, is all storytelling. And the stories are very gripping and very, if you read it, and I'm not suggesting you do. I
started a couple of times. I just couldn't get through it.
Look, so next time you mistakenly drink Mexican water.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll have a lot of time. You'll have plenty of time. So I'm just saying to you, if you read it, it will bother you because of the way the Jews are portrayed. It's like watching Al Jazeera. You're going, oh, God, this is terrible. Right. Like, I made the mistake of watching Al Jazeera on what happened in Amsterdam with the soccer game and how they framed it, that the Jew, I was watching it, I couldn't believe this. Mamish, they were like, it wasn't even, the New York Times, which is more clever, it's more subtle. You read The Guardian and you're just shocked that they're framing things in this way. So the New Testament is very, very, very dark. And this is another thing. That's why I understand Christians. And that's why people go, don't you get angry? Don't you get frustrated? Don't you want to jump out? I would never be able to talk to them calmly. I get them. That means I know where they're coming from. And if I was exposed to this kind of literature, I'd hate me too. So therefore, I understand where they're coming. I understand exactly. It took years because at first I thought I'm just going to show them that this pasuk was changed by the thing. And they go, oh, I didn't know. I'm out. It's just like, let's say you bought a stock in Tesla. And I'm telling you, Tesla tomorrow is going to nosedive. You'd rather get on the phone with the broker and say, sell off everything in Tesla and let's short out Tesla. But it doesn't work like that. People are emotionally connected to Christianity, and Christianity is selling low self-esteem. That means you're a sinner, you're filthy, you're worthless, nothing to do to save yourself, and therefore someone else died for your sins. And if you have a lousy self-esteem, boy, Christianity is very, very attractive.
You know Usher Wade?
Yes.
So I was asking him my kashas once in Christianity. How could it be? It says like this. Why should it be like that? And he looks at me and he goes, you don't get it. You're looking for the Christian Talmud. You don't ask questions. It's the faith. You can't say, it says like this in John, it says like this in Mark. We have a steerer. How do we do it? Oh, there's a third pasuk over there in, in James, and we can use, and bring the three pasukim together because you don't ask any questions. Like when they say, how could he have been the son of God and be the son of David?
Yeah, right. Like, but they don't ask that question. They don't understand that. Well, they do. They'll say to you, look, there are two genealogies in the New Testament, Matthew 1, Luke 3, and Luke's genealogy is that of Mary, and Matthew's genealogy is that of Joseph. So you say, but Joseph wasn't Jesus' father, according to you. All right, but we have Mary, and Mary was from the house of David, and that's in Luke. So you're looking at me, and I know what you're squinting your eyes. I mean, what does Mary have to do with anything? You know what tribe you're from through your father, not your mother. How do you know? It's a pasuk in the Torah, Numbers chapter 1. So you know all these things. That's great. Number two is you have a sneaking suspicion, although you're not a Bucky, on the end of Luke chapter 3. That's what the genealogy. You're pretty sure it doesn't say that Mary was from the house of David, and you're right, it doesn't. So what they're banking on is you don't have that access to the end of Luke's genealogy, where there's nothing there mentioned that Mary's from the house of David. Adarabba, in Luke 1:27, it says, Beferish, that it was Joseph that was from the house of David, not Mary. But if you don't know this, people will just scam you.
But Christians who know this.
No, but Christians don't. I mean, there are scholars. If you went to Yale Divinity, I've lectured many Christian universities. At the very top of the chain, the scholars, the guys who are professors at Duke, they have a Methodist. So those professors will all agree with you. I mean, you go to.
So how do they answer?
They don't answer. They say the Jews are correct in that their objections make complete sense. They're not from.
And therefore?
Oh, so they're very liberal. They are, if you're a Reformed Jew, please don't be offended. But they're kind of like Reform rabbis. So when they're, and there are many people, I'm sure, I don't mean it in a bad way, but they're kind of like, they know, the guys who really know at Yale Divinity, so they'll say that the Jews are correct, that it doesn't fulfill Messianic prophecies, nothing about the Messiah dying, rising on the third day. It's mamish invented. If you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 4, it openly says that there's a pasuk in Tanakh that says that the Mashiach is supposed to die and rise from the dead on the third day. And there's no such pasuk. Mamish makes it up. Lies through their teeth. Luke 24, 44 through 46. You went to yeshiva, you know this.
Sure,
I'm kidding.
Luke,
there you go. So finish a pasuk in Luke. Sure. Anyway, so Luke. So Luke,
you might as well say,
are these guests too advanced for any of you here? Okay.
You might as well say Yechezkel. Unfortunately,
no, I'm telling you,
about Corinthians.
I know this is crazy stuff because people are watching right now and probably go, you know what? I'm going to look this up because this is insane.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you again, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 4, it literally says that Jesus rose on the third day according to Tanakh. And then you go, where in Tanakh? It isn't there. So this stuff is made up and Christians just don't know it. It's mind-blowing.
Well, most Christians I have found don't know anything about Christianity. I know more about Christianity than they do. And that's kind of sad. I mean, I'm talking about just the beliefs and the foundations.
The ones that are easiest to get out of Christianity are the ones who are more knowledgeable. And I will share something that I'm sure you know.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode. And we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah, anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.